Hello and welcome back to Scale Down Customs. This is going to be part 4 of the Revell Ford Bronco build, and in this video we're going to get this thing finished up. So we're going to get the body sanded down, all my dust spots sanded down and polished back out, and then we're going to do the final assembly on the interior. So let's start with that. Alright, well evidently you have to let that epoxy dry a little bit more than I thought, so of course I squeezed my thumb into it and screwed that up. So luckily with epoxy you can just add another layer on top and it blends right in and clears it up again. So this time we're going to let that sit for a while and we'll have to move on to some other stuff while we're letting that dry up. Actually, I want to add a little bit of weathering to that radiator, so we're going to add in some Tamiya Panaline accent color dark brown. A little subtle, can't really see it too well, but maybe I'll add in some light brown in a little bit, but it looks a little better. So we'll let that dry up. Alright, so before I can go any farther, I need to start getting the body cleaned up and ready for its final parts, which means I need to sand out my dust spots. So I'm going to try something a little aggressive. I found these 3000 grit sanding sponges, and I'm going to use my heavy-duty drill and see how this does in sanding down my imperfections in my clear coat. So we will see how quickly this burns through my clear coat into my paint. Hopefully not, but... Alright, so yeah, that sanding sponge makes quick work of stuff, and yes, it will burn through clear coat and paint and everything else pretty quick, so just be really careful with that. And then I just went over it with a 5000 grit just to kind of take out that 3000 grit scratches, and so we're ready to polish this thing back up. So for most of my polishing, I'm going to be using the Gravity Compounds 1 and 2, 1 being the most aggressive, and then with the stiffest sponge, the orange sponge, 2 being the medium aggressive, with the medium sponge, the yellow sponge, and then I'll probably finish it up with the Scale Finishes blue polish with the black sponge just to finish everything off. Alright, and just with the first pass, that looks a lot better. So we're going to keep polishing this down and finish it up. Now sometimes as I'm polishing, it looks really shiny, but then if you look really close, you can see there's still some pretty good scratch marks in there from the 3000 grit. So once you start polishing, those will kind of show up a little bit more. So sometimes I'll just re-hit it again with this is a 5000 grit, just to kind of get those scratch marks smoothed out a little bit more. Alright, so we've got our nice and polished up, looking nice and shiny. Had to go back a couple of times and just do a little 3000, 5000, then polish it, just to get those final scratches out, because one of the good things about the 2K clears is it's really hard, and of course, as you can imagine, that's also the bad thing about 2K clear, is it is really hard and it takes a lot of sanding and polishing to get that smoothed out. So anyway, we're going to keep moving ahead with the rest of the body and get this thing polished up. Alright, so yeah, I got a little aggressive with my sanding and burned through the clear coat and the decal and the paint. So we're going to touch that up a little bit. So I'm just going to be using the gloss white, and we're just going to kind of dab to kind of fill up these spots here. Alright, looks pretty rough. We're going to let that dry up, and then we'll kind of polish that down a little bit, see if we can't blend it in a little bit more. Alright, so while we're waiting for the body to dry up so we can fix that a little bit more, let's get some of our glass ready. Some of these glass pieces have a really small border, so I'm just going to hand paint these with my marker, with my Gundam marker. This is just the black. And then these borders on the side windows, a little bit thicker, so I'm going to mask these off and spray them. I'm just going to go spray some Tamiya semi-gloss black around there and it should be good. Alright, so we got the windows sprayed, and also I just polished that down a little bit. It still looks pretty bad, but oh well, it's part of the learning process, I guess. Anyway, so we're going to keep moving ahead. I'm going to put some bare metal foil on this trim piece here on the body and then start getting some assembly done. So I'm going to try something that I just saw on the Scale Modeling channel. I get a ton of my good ideas and inspiration from him. So what I saw him do was put a little bit of tape on the body, and that way it kind of protects the body pieces from getting some of that sticky residue left over sometimes when you peel off the bare metal foil. So I thought I would try that. Alright, got my guard tape installed. Let's put some foil on. So one of the keys with bare metal foil is make sure you have a really sharp, preferably brand new X-Acto blade. So this is my new one and this is my recycled one. Step down from when I put a new one in here. So I'll use this one just to cut it on off of the backing paper, and then I'll use my new one to trim it on the body. That way I can kind of keep my blades a little bit sharper, a little bit longer. So when you pull the foil off the paper, just kind of pull it up and back, because if you pull it this way, it'll really curl up on you. So this way it tends to be a little bit more straight when you pull it off. And we're going to just burnish that down a little bit. Alright, well I think I got my guard tape too close underneath, and it kind of pulled some of the foil up, and then I tried to stick it back down and it didn't want to stick very well, so I'm going to redo that, but I'm going to try it without the guard tape this time and see if I can get a good shape on that. In fact, I'm just going to take the rest of this off for now. I think it's a good idea, and I'll try it on some other spots, but I think with this one, because the trim actually sits on top of a raised area of the body, so there's a curve that goes up underneath. I'm just fighting with that a little bit on this application, so I'm just going to try it with the foil straight on the body this time. Alright, I guess my camera decided it didn't want to film anymore, but so I got the rest of the bare metal foil on. So we're going to continue on with some assembly on this. So I did a little bit more detail painting on the marker lights and some of the other lights, the tail lights, things like that, but evidently my camera was in slow-mo mode, so that didn't work. So I got some more of the detail painting done, and I installed some of the windows. And again, apologize for not recording that, or I did record it, but it wasn't in the right speed, so So we're getting closer, just a couple little details and we'll get this thing finished up. Alright, so just using my Super Gold Plus, the Clear Part Safe glue, I decided to glue the side windows onto the windshield first. Just putting the windshield in place and then gluing the side windows in. That way I could get those lined up and getting the angle on the windshield right. And then I could just glue it all down together. Alright, so once again, I like to make things harder than they need to be. So when I touched my kicker on there, some of the glue was still wet, so it kind of pulled up onto the brush and brushed across the windows on both windows. So I will need to let that dry a little bit and then sand that down and polish that out. So I'm sure I'll end up breaking the windows off in the process and have to re-glue them, but anyway, like I said, I love doing things the hard way. So alright, moving ahead. Alright, so the windshield wasn't in the right spot that I wanted it. It set up a little bit taller than sitting down in the groove. So I decided to pull everything off, and that way I could get access to these windows and sand them down. So I'll just show you how I repair those. So basically I just get some 3000 grit sanding paper and just basically sand out the glue spots. You can see I still have some glue spots there. So when you're just going to sand that down until you don't see any more glue spots and you just see scratches, smooth scratches. And then we're just going to polish that back out. Maybe I'll go over it with the 5000 grit just to smooth it off as much as possible. Oh yeah, that actually worked a lot better. Okay, now we'll just polish that out and probably just use a Q-tip. Alright, so I decided to machine polish this down using the Gravity Colors 1, 2, and 3 polishes. And after I wet sanded it, 3000 grit and then a 5000 grit and then polished them back out again. As you can see, no more glue. So that is how you get rid of glue on your glass or any other small marks or scratches or whatever you want to get rid of. Anyway, so we're ready for windshield installation, take 2. Again, I'm going to use my Clear Part Safe Super Gold Plus for that. I am going to use my kicker again, but this time I'm not going to touch the window. much better placement on the windshield. It's sitting a little bit lower down into the frame, and no glue on our windows. So, looking good. Alright, and with the tire carrier in, this build is done. So I'm going to get her cleaned up, get my fingerprints cleaned off of there, and we'll get her ready for the photo op. So that'll do it for this build. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.